Percy Harvin is the same guy that was attacking high school referees. You are about to obtain generational wealth. The only thing you gotta do, that is one of the biggest no-nos. You just can't do that. That's one of the biggest things you can't do, and you still do it. I don't even understand how the thought of doing that stuff comes into your mind. Let me ask you a question. Who is the most electric or game-breaking wide receiver you've ever seen in your life? I would say right now a player that immediately popped into my mind when I even thought about the question or thought about answering the question is no other than Tyreek Hill. And by the way, I'm not just talking about NFL, I'm talking about football in general. It could be college or NFL. And I'm sure for you guys, when I asked you that question, there was a bunch of different players that popped into your mind, and I would love to hear some of your answers down below. But for myself, there's another player that sticks out to me because he was coming onto the scene right when I also, coincidentally enough, was at the age where I could start understanding the game of football and really keeping up with it. Now I remember watching this guy as an 8 or 9-year-old on my TV screen going, holy crap. You can't stop him because you simply couldn't catch him. This guy in the open field was a blur, and to put into a better perspective here, he was the type of guy where you select his game in NCAA, I'm talking about the old school games on PS2, just to play with him. You didn't care about the team, you just want to play with his speed. He was simply that good, and I can remember it vividly, even till this day, just being in awe watching him play. And whoa, hold on. I know what I was sitting here saying, Matt. Who in the crap are you talking about? Great question, my friend, and now that I think about it, I don't know why I haven't said his name already, but I'm referring to no other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Percy Harvin. Yeah, that's right. I know as soon as I said that name, it scratched a back part of your brain because if you're a big-time college football fan or even NFL fan, you remember this guy. And you probably also remember him for the one characteristic trait I remember him for, speed. And that's it. Speed. And here's a little teaser. Trust me, we're going to get all this in just a second. But as a 9th grader, a freshman in high school, not a freshman in college, a freshman in high school, he got clocked in at a 4.32 40-yard dash. What about that? And oh yeah, here's something nobody's really going to bring up or talk about. And how can I forget to mention that in high school, his best sport, it wasn't even football. It was track and field. He became the first athlete since 1936 to win not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 gold medals at the state track meet. And he was also, no big deal, but the #1 overall recruit in the nation. Not the #1 receiver, #1 overall recruit. And you're probably thinking the same way I was before I did all my research for this video. Matt, I know how it goes. He winds up going to Florida, had a good career there, and he went to the NFL. And yeah, he wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible. That would be putting an extremely long story short, though, and I don't think it does his story any due diligence whatsoever. Why did I say due diligence there? I don't even think that goes hand in hand with the phrase I was trying to say. I should say justice, but you get what I'm trying to say. You get the point. Here's the thing about good old Percy Harvin. Unfortunately, he was a madman. I mean this in the most respectful way possible, but even dating back to high school, he was having major character flaws and major red flags that were coming out. You want to talk about being wired differently? That's what Percy Harvin was. He failed a freaking drug test at the NFL Combine. And all the red flags that came out about Percy Harvin in high school and during his time with the Florida Gators, that was just the beginning, to say the least. If you wanted to chalk up what he did at the collegiate level and in high school as, okay, he was a young guy, made a bunch of mistakes, I might, and it's just a might, give you the benefit of the doubt there. But what he did in the NFL, there is no excusing it, and I hate to throw this out there, but it's how I feel about him, and with everything I've seen, you'll see exactly what I'm referring to. I think he was a maniac. And maybe he's not. Maybe that's pushing a little too far. You can be the judge for yourself, but that's how he was acting. And I've came to the conclusion the only reason he was in the NFL as long as he was is because his talent outweighed all the bad things he did. I'll put it to you like this. If he was an average receiver, or we'll say even a slightly above average wide receiver, he wouldn't have got the opportunities he did. And it goes to prove that life isn't fair, but just due to how special and how rare of a talent he was, people were willing to and coaches were willing to overlook all the bad things he was doing. And I know it seems like I'm trying to hype his story up, but I can't emphasize enough to you guys how weird his story is and how mind-boggling it is. As a matter of fact, take a look at this comment. This got over 1,500 likes. Dang, what a strange career. That is in reference to something else we're about to get into. I know we're doing a lot of foreshadowing, but hey, it is what it is. There's a lot of questions people are asking about Percy Harvin even till this day, but it all circles back to the one, and I mean the one big question we're going to try to get to the bottom of in today's video. What really happened to Percy Harvin? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hope all of you have a great and fantastic day. And real quick, if there's any recommendations on our stories, players you guys want to see, feel free to drop them down below and top like, comment. More times than not, we'll make a video on that. Although I hate the offseason as much as anybody else, because there's nothing better than spending all day on your couch on Saturday watching college football, and same thing for the NFL on Sunday. I do enjoy the offseason for this reason, because we get to make our story videos. These videos do take a lot of research and, quite frankly, a lot of time to make, so if you do enjoy the videos and whatnot, consider subscribing. We'd love to have you here. And yeah, that's really all I got for you guys. Get you a snack, get you a popcorn, get you a favorite meal you like to eat when you watch a video, because trust me, I do the same thing. It's going to be a good video to say the least. We got a lot to get into, so alright, man, blah, blah, shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Man, oh man, good old Percy Harvin. Whew. Where do you even start with this guy? Actually, I don't even know why I said that, because, to get into his story, we gotta go all the way back to where things started, and that is no other than his high school career. And good gosh almighty, we can make a separate 20-minute video just talking about Percy Harvin's high school career and all of his achievements. He was simply that good, but like I stated, as a freshman, he got clocked in at a 4.32 40-yard dash. Not too shabby. And you know how this goes. I like to run through these high schools fairly quickly because it's the #1 overall recruit in the country, #1 player in the nation. You know he dominated. You don't need me to sit up here and explain it. I will throw this in there though. In the state championship game, as a junior, he had 476 all-purpose yards in rushing, receiving, kick returns, and interception returns, and he scored 5 touchdowns. And looking back on it, I can't help but think about this. If social media was around back when Percy Harvin was in high school, he'd have been the next best thing since sliced bread. He was a phenomenal football player, but we know that. But also, he was a really good basketball player as well. And in track and field, I'm not even going to sit up here and read off all of his achievements and medals he won because it's utterly ridiculous. Listen how absurd this sounds. In 2005, he won 5 state titles in track and field. And I know what you're sitting there saying, Matt, how do you win more than 1 state title in 1 season? And that's because in track and field, there's multiple different events. For example, he won the 100 meters race, 200 meters, the long jump, and the triple jump, and I could go on and on. But with all that great stuff being said, and as phenomenal as an athlete he was, there were some bad things in high school that didn't get talked about. His junior year in football, he got suspended 1 game for unsportsmanlike conduct. At least that's what they labeled it. Not a big deal though, not a big deal whatsoever. However, his senior year, he got suspended 2 games, which, more importantly, was the final 2 regular season games after making contact with an official and using inappropriate language during a game. That one right there was really eye-opening to me, that a kid in high school would have big enough balls to be cussing at a ref and making contact with a ref. I don't know if he pushed him, I don't know what went down, but it had to be pretty bad if they suspended him for the 2 final games. To go along with that, when basketball season rolled around, him and his teammates, it was a common occurrence for them to get in what they're labeling as quote-unquote scuffles. And one of the scuffles, fights, whatever you want to call it, it got so bad that the referees had to stop the game. And they just said, you know what, we're not even going to finish it. That's how bad it was. And since Percy Harvin had a pretty big role in that fight during the basketball game, his athletic association that runs his high school and whatnot, I guess his county is a better way of putting it, they suspended him from all sports. And of course, this wasn't just like a one-time thing. This was a result of other minor things. The unsportsmanlike thing his junior year, his senior year, making contact with a referee, and then most recently, basketball. And here's the kicker with that. Since he got suspended by the athletic association, he couldn't participate in track and field that year, which ultimately cost him, at bare minimum, I'm going to say, since he won 5 medals in 1 year, I'm going to say another 4 medals. And it also hurt his track and field team tremendously because, obvious, he was their best player. And it goes back to something I've been preaching on the channel for years now. Your best ability in this life is availability. I don't care how talented you are. You may be the most gifted person ever, but if you're not available, you're not worth anything. And this isn't just for football, guys. This applies for everything you do in your life. 80% of whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying to achieve, whether that's going to work, going to the gym, whatever it is, I firmly believe 80% of that is just showing up. The other 20%, you can say 10% of it is talent, and the other 10% is hard work. But here's a big problem with all of this. Yes, Percy Harvin was getting in a lot of trouble in high school, but most people just brushed it under the rug. Why did they brush it under the rug? Come on, man. Don't act brand new around here. You know why. Because he was a phenomenal athlete. He was the #1 player in the nation. I mean, think about it. If you're coaching a high school football team and your 3rd string quarterback, he's doing stuff like this, it'd probably piss you off. You say, you know what, you're a 3rd string quarterback. I don't need to deal with these problems and stress. You're off the team. On the other hand, let's say your #1 overall player on the team is doing stuff like Percy Harvin. You're not going to be so quick to kick him off the team because your job relies on Percy Harvin. And also Percy Harvin at the time, everybody knew he was a future NFL player, so they gave him a long leash. It's kind of like with girls. You know how it is. The prettier a girl is, the more red flags you'll overlook. Same thing with athletes. The better athlete you have on your team, the more red flags you'll overlook there. Continuing along though with our story, Percy Harvin, #1 recruit in the nation, and you know how this goes. Every school in the country, they wanted him. Ultimately though, to make a long story short here, he winds up deciding to commit and sign with the University of Florida. Percy Harvin's career at Florida wasn't too controversial. I know that may sound a little odd to you considering all the controversial things that happened in high school, but at Florida, he seemed tamed. He was under control. Yeah, there's a couple minor things you could point to. Like, for example, there is this story that's always been floating around for years now. I'm not too sure if y'all are familiar with Urban Meyer's coaching ways, but he coached his teams really hard in practice, and he made them run a lot. And let's just say Percy Harvin, he wasn't too fond of all the running, and one day, while they were running stairs, he sat down in the middle of the workout and said, "We ain't doing this crap," but he didn't say crap anymore. And allegedly, I don't know how true this is, but it was said the next day they wanted to play basketball for conditioning. I can't confirm that story, but I remember hearing about that years ago, so it's one of those things, you can do what you want with the information, but I have no reason not to believe it. Why would people make that up? I want you to think about this. Percy Harvin, as a high schooler, went up to a ref, pretty much pushed him and cussed at him, a referee. He also got in constant fights on the basketball court. So you mean to tell me you don't believe he wouldn't go back and forth with Urban Meyer and say, "Hey, I ain't doing all this running anymore"? You get the point I'm trying to make here. It's not too far-fetched to believe that story. And there's some other minor incidents that happened at Florida, but nothing too crazy yet, at least from my knowledge. I can't touch on every single thing he did because we'd be up here making a video that's 2.5 hours long, and you guys don't want to see that. As far as it goes for on the field, Percy Harvin, he made an immediate impact. He didn't redshirt, didn't do any of that. As a true freshman, he was out there and he was performing. And I'll show you his receiving yards right here in 2006. 34 catches. It's all right. 400 yards, nothing crazy, and 2 touchdowns. And you're sitting here looking at these numbers going, well, Matt, that's not really that good for the former #1 overall recruit in the nation, and I'd agree. But here's the kicker with Percy Harvin. For those of you who don't remember, Urban Meyer liked using him a lot on those jet sweeps and handing the ball off to him. And in 2006, he actually had more rush attempts and more rushing yards than he did as a wide receiver. 41 carries for 428 yards and 3 touchdowns, so also had more touchdowns as well. He was also a kick returner too, so remember that, but we're just going to talk about his receiving and rushing yards. Fast forward in time into 2007, bumped up his receiving. 59 catches for 858 yards and 4 touchdowns. 2007 as well, and this was really his breakout year. 83 carries for 764 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. And if he could have came out for the NFL draft after that 2007 season, he probably would have done that, and he also probably would have been a top 5 pick. I don't know, maybe top 5's pushing it, but definitely in the top 10. Doesn't do that though. In 2008 comes back and pretty much a carbon copy paste. You know how it goes. 644 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground, 70 carries, nearly, well I was going to say 700, but we'll just say 659 and 10 touchdowns on the ground. In other terms here for his career at Florida, he was that dude. And I think the best word to use to describe Percy Harvin is he was versatile. And I don't want to sit up here and say he was ahead of his time because his career panned down and it worked insanely well considering all the circumstances which we're about to get into. But he really was ahead of his time. And maybe that's why I and so many other people out here were so mesmerized by him, because you didn't see people doing stuff like Percy Harvin was doing, and you still don't see it till this day. I mean, what got the collegiate level is having 700 receiving yards and 700 rushing yards. And this was back in 2007 and 8. These stats, of course, we have inflation with money and stuff, but you also got inflation in college football on the offensive side of the ball. Having 700 receiving yards and 700 rushing yards in 2007, that's the equivalent to having, I'd say, 1,000 receiving yards and 1,000 rushing yards in 2024. I don't think it's crazy at all to say that. I don't. And with him having this outstanding career at Florida, everybody and their mama thought he was going to be a top 10 pick. But unfortunately, Percy Harvin being Percy Harvin, at the NFL Draft Combine, he failed a drug test. I'm going to address this a little bit, but don't even get me started. That's why I say people are wired differently. How do you even rationalize that? You are about to obtain generational wealth. The only thing you got to do, that is one of the biggest no-nos. You can do a lot of things in this life heading into the NFL Draft Combine. You just can't do that. That's one of the biggest things you can't do, and you still do it. I don't even understand how the thought of doing that stuff comes into your mind. And you know people are telling him, his agent, his family, everyone's telling him, hey, make sure you don't do drugs before the combine because they're going to test you. And he still did it. And he doesn't need people to tell him not to do it. You know not to do it. And I don't feel bad for him whatsoever. You can't feel bad for him. It's his own mistake. But I would just love to understand how people like that think. And for some of you that don't understand why this is such a big deal, Percy Harvin, like I said, was going to be a top 10 pick. And if you fail a drug test, you were going to lose out on millions. I'm talking about multiple M's. The difference from being drafted number 8 overall and number, we'll just say 20th overall, is huge. And honestly, the only thing that bailed him out in this situation is, yet again, his talent. When him failing the drug test, there was a lot of conversations that he will be falling out of the first round because multiple people just crossed him off their draft boards because they didn't want to deal with the problems. When these teams are giving a kid tens of millions of dollars, the last thing they want is to worry about you off the field because, like I said, your best ability is availability. Although Harvin did fall a little bit in the draft, he still got selected number 22 overall in the first round by the Minnesota Vikings. And as far as it goes from a talent perspective, you already know what I'm about to say. Heck of a pickup for the Vikings. You got Percy Harvin, number 22 overall. But there was also a reason he fell to number 22 overall, so it was a double-edged sword. It was one of those situations where it was high risk, high reward, and it paid off for him immediately. In 2009, his rookie season, Percy Harvin had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, and he was the Rookie of the Year. And things were looking great for Percy Harvin. Although he failed the drug test and he had some character flaws and concerns, it seemed like he might have put those past him. Little did we know at the time, though, in 2009, him winning Rookie of the Year, that was, I'd argue and say, the pinnacle of his career. Well, actually, I take that back. That 2009 year, that wasn't the pinnacle of his career, but that was arguably the best achievement of his career. That's a better way to say it. All in all, though, the 2009 year, it was great. You get the point there. But fast forward time into 2010, while he was practicing, this is when he started battling some migraine issues. I don't have to explain what a migraine is. We should all know this, but if you don't know, I don't know why you wouldn't know this, but if you don't, it is a severe version of a headache. Like I was saying, though, during a practice before the 2010 season, he had a migraine attack and he had to be taken to the hospital. It appeared to seem, though, at the time that was a one-time thing because in 2010, it didn't slow him down whatsoever. In that 2010 season for the Viking, he increased his receptions from 60 to 71 and his yards to 868 and 5 touchdowns. Really good season, outstanding, but in 2011, he got even better. Jumped up his receptions from 71 to 87 and nearly had 1,000 receiving yards. Not bad whatsoever, and the 2010 and 2011 seasons, there's not too much to say. He was just a good player. Sadly, though, after that 2011 season, this is where our story, it is a downhill slope from here on out. You're probably thinking in 2012 he had some controversies going on, maybe he got in an altercation, and no, it was none of that. He just had the injury bug. He was really good, and in his first 6 games of the 2012 season, he had 3 games with over 100 receiving yards. To give you some more perspective, he was ranked at number 90th overall in the NFL Top 100 Players list. But unfortunately, he had an ankle injury and he missed a lot of games. Only got to play in 9 games that year, but when he was playing, he was really good, and if he would have played all 16 games, he would have been on pace for over 1,000 yards. Had 62 catches for 677 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like I said, just injury problems. After the 2012 season, though, and this was also another pivotal moment in his career and in his life, the Vikings, they wound up trading him to the Seattle Seahawks. And this is where the butterfly effect goes into play here, because if he never gets traded to the Seahawks, who knows what would have happened. I don't want to sit up here and say, oh, well, if the Vikings would have kept him, he would have went on to be this outstanding Hall of Fame wide receiver, but you never know. If you're going off of what we see with the cold hard facts, if he'd have stayed with the Vikings, he would have been way better off than going to the Seahawks, I'll say that. And we can play the if, and but game all day long, but the bottom line is he got traded. And as soon as he got traded, guess what? He also got a nice chunk of change. The Seattle Seahawks gave him a new 6-year, $67 million contract. That is a huge contract for a wide receiver, even in 2024, but this was back in 2013. Percy Harvin got paid, and congratulations to him. And you know what he did in that first year with that new $67 million contract? You want to take a guess? You're probably thinking, oh, he probably had like 800 receiving yards. And no, that wasn't the case whatsoever. He had 1 catch, count them, 1 catch, not even catches, but a catch for 17 yards. He didn't even play until week 11 with the Seahawks because in the offseason, he had surgery on a labrum tear in his hip. First game back, he was uncomfortable, and come to find out, he was experiencing what they're labeling as quote-unquote inflation in his hip. It is worth being noted, though, he did have that huge opening kickoff in the second half of the Super Bowl that he took for a touchdown, and he helped the Seahawks win a Super Bowl, and he got a ring, so congratulations to him for that. But here's the thing about that. There was some stuff that went on behind the scenes with Percy Harvin and a receiver that goes by the name of no other than Golden Tate. If you like drama, this is where things in our story really get interesting. What I'm about to read off to you, yes, it is long, but I think it's worth throwing in the video because it's super important to our story. As I was doing my research for this video, I saw multiple different articles talking about how Percy Harvin and the Seahawks, they had a lot of problems. However, here's what I didn't see. Anybody go into detail or any of those articles go into detail about it. It was just said that Percy Harvin and the Seahawks, it didn't work out because him and the wide receivers, they had beef. Kept doing some more research and digging and shout to Reddit because you're going to find a lot of answers to anything on Reddit. This person that goes by this username right here, they explained everything. This Reddit post states, Percy refused to enter games twice last season. Both were losses, late versus the Chargers and late versus the Cowboys. Percy Harvin straight up refused to enter the game when he was told to. Not only is that about the crappiest thing you can do to your teammates that is nonviolent, telling the coaches, quote unquote, no, I'm not going in, but we catered our offense for Percy Harvin. Even though our offense wasn't bad early, it was gimmicky looking. Tons of fly sweeps, doing everything we could to get Percy going. So to cater an offense for him just to refuse to enter games is a blank move. Wilson's yards per average went back up once Percy was traded. Whoa, Matt. You said yards per average, buddy. It's yards per attempt. My bad. Continuing along here, he also got in a fight with Golden Tate the night before Super Bowl 48. You see, this is what I was looking for because I saw a lot of rumors and people talking about this. Some even feared he had actually broken Tate's neck. Mike Robb confirmed the fight happened, but Golden won't because it's just the NFL player thing to do while you're both still in the NFL. To add to this story, this has been confirmed by multiple different sources. There was a fight between Golden Tate and Percy Harvin, and I've even read, I can't believe this person didn't throw it in here, but I heard that Percy Harvin body slammed him. But I digress. Continuing along here, during training camp, Pete Carroll said Doug Baldwin and Percy Harvin were having a quote-unquote personal off day one day. Turns out, it was because they got in a little fight, but Pete hid that until the leaks came out immediately following the trade. Then Brock Hurd himself, who was around the team a lot, confirmed that the Seahawks wide receiver room was becoming toxic. I heard a story of how the wide receivers were talking in the wide receiver room. Percy walks into the wide receiver room, walks up, and elbows Doug Baldwin in the back of the head when he walks into him and starts going off. Quote unquote, why are you guys talking crap about me? Doing the alpha male trying to fight thing when they apparently weren't even talking about him. The quote unquote diva word should be used sparingly, but I think it fits Percy perfectly well. Yeah, you could chalk that up to, well, we don't know if this is true or whatnot, and why would I believe this, but remember, Percy Harvin is the same guy that was attacking high school referees and got basically suspended in high school from participating in any sports by his athletic association because he was, number one, did that thing with the ref, but number two, was fighting people on a basketball court. I say that to say this. It shouldn't be necessarily hard to believe this story, but let's continue along here. And then after the Cowboys game, Russell Wilson confronted Percy Harvin about his crappy attitude, and Percy wanted to fight Russell Wilson, and that was the final straw. The Seahawks have been trying to trade him for weeks it came out, and we might have straight up cut him if we got Deshaun Jackson or Steve Smith Sr. in free agency following Super Bowl 48. At first, it didn't make sense why Seattle was interested in Steve Smith Sr., but it does in hindsight after finding out Seattle would have ditched him if they found another wide receiver. Wow. So, yeah, there's that. If you want my honest opinion on that statement from that Reddit user, I mean, it makes sense. And a lot of the stuff he said, it's not him just making it up. There's plenty of other people talking about it, or they did talk about it at the time. And I know some people are going to say, well, Matt, why are you believing some random Reddit post from 7 to 8 years ago? I can't emphasize this enough. Because this Reddit post I just showed you, it explained everything in detail. All the other articles out there, they do not. I like the comment because it sums it up the best and it goes over all the high points. Continuing along though in our story, because it's not over quite just yet, because we're still in the time frame of 2013. Seattle winds up trading him to the New York Jets because of obvious reasons. Percy Harvin, he was a menace to society in the locker room. It wasn't good, they wasn't having it, and as we all know, the New York Jets is where careers go to die. And for the Jets in 8 games played, he seemingly did nothing, had 29 catches for 350 yards. To make a long story short with the Jets, wasn't a good fit, and they wound up releasing him, but check this out. In 2015, the Bills signed him for a 1 year or two, a 1 year, $6 million contract. I still can't believe that. And some people may not think that's a big deal, but I do, because I don't know how they came to the rational decision that he was even worth $6 million a year. You know, these guys in the NFL, these GMs, executives that finalize these contracts, they talk to his previous employers. And you know dang well they knew he had a lot of these bad character flaws and traits, and they still signed him. And on top of that, his production's dropped off mightily. He was no longer in his prime. When Seattle got him, yeah, you could argue and say he's in his prime. He was coming off a great season for the Vikings. But by 2015, no, not in his prime. And not only was he not in his prime, he just mentally just wasn't in the greatest headspace. And for the Bills, it was similar to the Jets. It wasn't a great offensive fit for him, and he only appeared in 5 games. In those 5 games, 19 catches for 200 yards. If you got to ask me, they ain't worth $6 million. And then his final and last season in the NFL was in 2016. He stayed on the Bills. He only appeared in 2 games, had 2 catches for 6 yards. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is the abrupt ending to Percy Harvin's NFL career. Or at least that's what we thought. And also need to throw this in here. Remember earlier when I was talking about he was having those migraine issues in 2010? Well, they came back to bother him in 2016. And it got so bad he was placed on the reserve/non-football illness list, and he wound up deciding to retire because those migraines were bothering him that much. And I can't tell you enough how much I hate that he was dealing with these migraine problems. And I know some people, I do want to address this, are going to say, well, Matt, maybe these migraine problems are the reason he was acting the way he was in the NFL. No. You can't give him that excuse because remember, he was acting this way in high school. And I know what all you're sitting there saying, well, Matt, if his career ended in 2016 or 2017, where is he at now? It's 2024. Detective Matt being in the building, I have found out that Percy Harvin neither has A, an Instagram, or B, a Twitter. So number 1, there's no signs of this guy on social media whatsoever. And number 2, there's just no signs of him in general anywhere. Nobody knows anything about him. The only thing I could find is that in 2020, a report came out, and here's what it states, quote unquote. Percy Harvin told somebody who works for ESPN this: "I'm ready to return to the NFL. I thought I was done, but that itch came back. I've been training with a former Olympian. My body is feeling good. Mentally, I'm better. My family's good. The timing is right." He stated that in 2020, and nobody picked him up. And I wound up spending around roughly, I'd say anywhere from 5 to 7 hours trying to find out just any piece of information on where Percy Harvin is today or what's he doing. And I've came to the executive conclusion and decision that the answer's right in front of me. He's nowhere to be found, and he's off the grid. I hope he's doing all right, and unless he somehow, someway squandered all of those millions and millions of dollars, he should be all right. And it's a really good debate when you just talk about Percy Harvin's career in general, because as I was reading up on everything, I saw a lot of people arguing whether or not he had a good career. This post got over 2,300 likes on Reddit. His career is over, and I still have no idea if he's any good or not. And I think this sums up the best. He was a great utility player. That's about it. Injuries, migraines, and character flaws prevented him from reaching full potential. Another comment. In my opinion, he's had a really good football career. He got Rookie of the Year, Pro Bowl, 2-time national champion, 1-time Super Bowl, or 1 Super Bowl, my apologies, with a sick return touchdown and probably more that I'm missing. He never went over 1,000 yards and will probably be a footnote within 10 years, but he definitely accomplished more than most, and I agree. That's why it makes for a good argument, because I think all in all we're in the same boat on this. Compared to what his potential could have been, he didn't even come close to it. If he would have had the right mindset, the right head screwed on, this guy could have went down as arguably one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game. And I know some people are going to say, Matt, that is a ridiculous statement. And I'm not saying that would have happened. I'm just saying that's his potential. That is best case scenario, and that was his potential. I'm going to remind y'all, this dude was an unreal prospect coming out of high school and really coming out of Florida too. And although he didn't live up to all the hype, I think it's really unfair to say he was a bust, because I don't think he was. I just don't think you can call him a bust. I think you could argue and say he's close to a bust depending on how much you valued him, but I think bust is a little too far. I think a bust is somebody like Anthony Bennett. If you know, you know. A bust is where you accomplish nothing. At least Percy Harvin had 3 to 4 decent seasons, and really good seasons at that. Wow, he was my favorite player in the entire league at one point. Great player, but wasn't mature enough, really. I'll miss him for sure, though. I thought this was interesting. Somebody said, why is Percy Harvin hated? And somebody wound up replying, he was locker room cancer. He's an interesting case study for sure, because all of his controversies and all of his incidents he had from high school to the NFL, it was just nothing more, nothing less than being a rage monster and losing your mind. What a story, though, man. What a story. Let me know your thoughts down below. But,